Hello, and welcome once again to the Dental Marketing Mastery Series. This podcast is brought to you by dentalwebcontent.com and New Patients Incorporated. I'm Howie Horrocks, the founder of New Patients Incorporated. Along with me once again is my friend and partner and the president of New Patients Incorporated, Mark Dilatush. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast once again. How are you doing, Mark?
All right, Howie. How's everything in Las Vegas?
Oh, it's just really peachy.
How far are you guys from getting a football team?
It looks about 2020. They're building the stadium right now.
No, I know. I saw the shell for it. That was cool.
Yeah.
2020.
The Raiders.
Yeah, I know.
I don't care. I'll never lose my allegiance to my Seahawks, though.
No, I know, and I'll never not be an Eagle fan. So
there you go.
It's just going to be interesting to have. And you're going to end up with two professional teams, and I bet you the NBA is right behind it. So. Yeah.
Well, we've already got the Golden Knights for a rookie hockey team. They're second in their division. So
there you go. All right.
Pretty good. Anyway,
so we have to continue.
Yes, our series. We have to continue our series on preparing for next year. Yes.
And the reason we don't put a year on it like 2018 is because you do the same exact sequence of considerations every year.
Yeah.
So this isn't just preparing for 2018. This is preparing for every year for the rest of your career.
Yep.
And we also want to point out, because we had some questions about, do I have to start my marketing planning for January 1st? No, of course not. Just because the Earth has made a complete rotation around the sun and does not mean that you have to start and stop your marketing plan on a January 1st. You have our encouragement to start to start your marketing plan preparations at any time during any month. You just have to understand it's going to change depending on when you want to first implement and when your campaign's about to end. So, and you're going to learn why that matters. But for the purposes of this series, we know a lot of dentists, at least all of our clients, they start and stop their marketing planning. They usually start around the middle of September. And the plan is usually in place by end of November, first part of December. And the first wave of deployment usually happens January 1st. That's just kind of a habit, right, that a lot of our clients have gotten into. So we're using this time frame this year to help everybody go through the questions that you have to ask yourself every year, not just for 2018. So
that's right.
So we left off at risk management, and I want to review in part 3. We discussed risk management. What risk management basically is. Well, okay, I have this budget resource, X thousands of dollars a year. Where should I put it? What poses the most risk to my marketing dollar? What poses the next most? And what poses all the way down to the least risk to my marketing dollar? And that is a huge part of risk management when you're determining what you do with your budget. And recently, I'm going to say probably over the last, the recession hit. So that's 2008. We got deluged by just hundreds of new clients. And I'm going to say that dentists started to misallocate their resources. I'm going to say around 2012. 2013. And this goes hand in hand with risk management. When you decide what you want to do with your dollar, you are making a determination. I am going to spend these dollars for this period of time for this purpose. So one of the ways you mitigate risk, Howie, is to talk about everything that you do, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you can mitigate risk. Here, let me back up. Here's what's risky. Talking about one thing forever.
Exactly. And if I might point out something here, let's give an example. I mean, sedation radio spots.
Yeah, back in 06,
Remember that?
07. Remember, yeah.
And don't get me wrong, we love sedation as a technology for your practice. It's great, but the danger you run into is what we've labeled a niche trap, however you want to pronounce it. You run the danger of putting money into one thing that you will become known for in your community. So in the case of sedation, it's like, oh, well, you don't want to go see him unless you want to get knocked out.
Right.
And that's all they know about you.
Right.
So, that's a danger, a real problem.
It is. So part of risk management is knowing which media types are the least risky to the most risky. That's one part of it. Another part is what you're presenting to the public. If you're presenting one thing at a time, that's fine, as long as you don't do one thing at a time for a very long period of time. That's what Howie was just talking about. You will niche trap yourself. Okay. You never want to niche trap yourself, ever. All of the dentists in 2003, 4, 5, and 6 who niche trapped themselves into being cosmetic dentists in March of 2008 suffered the consequences.
They sure did.
Okay, they sure did. All right, so you never want to do that. So that's part of risk management. Deployment planning is also part of risk management in that if you're going to have multiple messages, which you should, or if your media type allows you the space to list multiple reasons to choose you, which it should, then you need to know when to deploy these. I'm going to say when because there's lots to deployment planning. There is when and how much and at what cost. Okay, that's what deployment planning is. So you always start at the budget and you say, okay, well, let's say I have, I don't know, $30,000 of my budget and I haven't allocated it yet. Part of risk management is can I use $30,000 to penetrate this market within a reasonable amount of time with one or more messages? That's a very real, logical question. And this single question is what normally eliminates radio and television from 95% of dentist budgets.
Right. And probably billboards too. All the mass media.
Right. Yeah. Can you allocate $30,000 to, let's say, television locally? Yes, you absolutely can. Can you get enough impressions and enough traction on enough subjects for enough period of time? And in radio and television, that's 11 impressions, all right, per recipient, okay? Is your budget robust enough to do that, to accomplish that? And the answer for 90% of you is, oh, hell no.
Right.
No. The doctors that we have in radio and television are probably spending $6,000 to $7,000 a month. Not $30,000 a year, $6,000 or $7,000 a month in those media types. Yep. And all of them have tremendous internet presence, a ridiculously robust direct offline mail campaign. In other words, they have everything's already all set up for the radio and the TV to work at maybe that type of an allocation level. But if 90% of you don't have those things already set up, so radio, TV, and even honestly, even most print media like magazines, they've over time they've priced themselves out of your market. It's very difficult for a dentist to get. Let's use the same 30,000. Can I really get a full page ad in this trendy magazine that serves my local area for 12 months, for 30 grand? That's probably not, And if you're not the biggest, the baddest, and the best, and you're in and among 6, 7, 4, 9 other dental ads that are in the same trendy magazine, why are you even bothering?
Yeah, it's just way too risky without the foundational steps first.
Right.
We've gone over many times. And
right.
Well, we go over them again.
Right. So when it comes to deployment planning, you really have to conserve and use that 30 grand, whatever that number is. You have to use that very wisely. And you're going to want to have impressions going out rather consistently, because Howie and I have never met a dentist who said, you know what I'd like? I'd like 50 new patients one month and then like 8 the following month. If you could do 50 one month and then 8 in the alternating months, that would make me a happy dentist. No dentist has ever said that to us. What dentists want is they want an evenness. A good healthy level, volume, a good solid quality of new patient, but on a consistent basis. So if you're going to plan your marketing and you have a budget to allocate, and let's say it's 30 grand, whatever you're going to put out there is going to have to be able to be put out there monthly at a minimum.
Right.
Okay. This also dovetails into risk management. So here's, for instance, let's say we're going to do 30 grand, and it's actually less than that, but let's say we're going to allocate 30 grand and some of that's going to go to mail. And we're going to mail 10 months of the year, not 12. We're going to mail every month except for July and December in most U.S. markets. Part of risk management is also understanding, and deployment planning is also understanding where you live and the market you serve. There are dentists in Florida, for instance, who get snowbirds. So the snowbirds start flocking in about, Thanksgiving time. Now, in those markets, we may mail in November and December.
Right. Especially if it's a niche type mailing, for older folks like implants and
it might be a senior
dentures,
Yeah, implants, dentures, sleep apnea, what have you.
Perfectly good time to mail.
Exactly. So part of your deployment planning part of your risk management is deployment planning. Part of deployment planning is capacity and measuring your capacity. You want to talk about capacity when we come back from a break?
Yeah, let's take a break and we'll come back and continue this. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hi, Mark Dilatush here. I want to talk to you about NPI Concierge. This is the next big thing in dentistry. Today, about 2,000 dentists have it installed, and in 5 years, 50,000 dentists are going to have it installed. The dentists who start early will be the dentists who benefit the most. Concierge is real-time online scheduling integration between your practice's website and your practice management software. You have total control over what new and existing patients can and cannot schedule. If you'd like to see it for yourself, it takes about 20 minutes. Perhaps we can do it over a lunchtime. Send an email to demo@newpatientsinc.com. Don't be the last dentist in your market to do this. Be the first.
All right, we are back. Thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate it. We were just about to discuss capacity issues with your deployment, along with the deployment sequence that you want to have in place for the next year.
Yeah, well, measuring capacity is ongoing. It's not really something that you measure one time a year. For the folks listening to this who haven't heard us say this before, the max you want to be booked out, the doctor, the max you want anyone waiting for an appointment is 8 work days. So we run into this quite a bit where the doctor's feeling, it might be even a client of ours who's feeling really, sassy about how things are going. And their, chest puffs out a little bit and they say, "Oh, I'm booked up for the whole month." And we go, "No, stop. Dude, we're messing up." So, so here's why this matters within your risk management, within your deployment planning, is some of you may be thinking about expanding your capacity next year. So the question you ask yourself when you build your marketing plan for next year is, am I planning on any changes in capacity? If your answer is no, it's no big deal. Check it off. But let's go through some capacity items here and maybe give you some examples of how this would change your deployment planning. Let's say that the plan is for an associate to start in May. And right now you're booked out 5-6 days. Takes about a week for a new patient to be able to squeeze in the schedule to see you. Unless it's an emergency, obviously, you get them in sooner. So you have a really nice, solid solo practice. It's maybe kind of busting at the seams, maybe. And you thought, I'm going to go bring in an associate for maybe 2 days a week. Let's see how this is going to work. All right. Well, when the associate comes in, let me back up one step. There are 3 capacities to your dental practice. There's only 3. It's the number of dentist hours, the number of treatment rooms, and the number of operational hours. That's it. There's 3, okay? Anytime you expand or contract those, any one of the 3, you add significant stress on a marketing plan. Because remember, the marketing plan was designed to bring in a fairly predictable result. But you changed the rules midstream in May. You said, okay, I'm not going to have one dentist to fill the capacity for. This new dentist is actually going to add another 50% capacity to this dental practice. Because if the owner dentist was working 4 days a week and the associate comes in for 2 days a week, 2 is half of 4. That's 50% capacity increase in this dental practice. Well, if you get the same number of new patients consistently, which your marketing plan should be doing, then you're going to be really disappointed about the middle of June or July if you don't plan for this.
And the associate is especially going to be disappointed. Yes. And that's why these relationships often go sour.
That's right. That's right. It's not, it's always the same reason from both sides, right? The associate always tells us, well, the doctor didn't have enough patients for me. And the owner says, wow, the associate, we had clinical differences.
Creative clinical differences.
Exactly. It's always the same excuse, So anyway. When you're doing your risk management, you're in your deployment planning mode and you're looking at your capacity, you really do need to make sure that you plan both from a budget standpoint, from a deployment volume standpoint, maybe even from, and here's a great example of how you might attack this situation. Remember, the situation is we have a solo dentist, really nice practice, kicking along, maybe kind of growing at the seams, associate coming in May, and the doctor just maintains a consistent marketing plan that's helping, grow the practice now, thinking that the associate's just going to step right in and magically there's going to be enough patients for the associate. Well, magic doesn't work. Hope is not a marketing plan. So we would rather plan for how many additional patients that new associate is going to need, based on realistic numbers and statistics and volume and so on and so forth. So as you build your marketing plan, you're going to want to do that as well. Like if you're currently enjoying 20, 25, good solid patients, new patients a month, and you represent right now you represent 100% of your capacity. When that associate comes in representing 50% capacity, you're going to need another 12, 13, or 14 additional new patients a month, just because what's going to happen. The existing patients are all going to choose you, the owner. They're not going to want to see the new guy or gal. They're going to want to see the owner. So you're really going to need to up perhaps definitely the budget. But one thing you might want to do when you're there is, if you're promoting to the top half for your patients and you want to just get volume temporarily into the practice for your associate, you might want to promote to the top and bottom simultaneously with two different messages, not going to the same targets, just two different messages to the right section, segment of targets, temporarily, maybe for 60 or 90 days. Well, that's going to add to your budget, right? That's going to add to your expenses. You need to plan for that, right? So anyway, we're getting maybe a little bit deep for folks, but this is where, these points in your career is where marketing becomes real challenging, right? Well, you can plan for these challenging times, and it's pretty neat that if you plan properly for it, it ends up not being as much of a challenge, right?
Right.
It actually works and works well, and within reason. It's not 100% predictable, but it becomes, much more predictable. And if you know what to expect, and the associate knows what to expect, this brings us back full circle to our comments, our snarky comments from before. If the owner knows what to expect and the associate knows what to expect, and, reality is pretty close to what those expectations were, you end up not having disharmony between the owner and the associate.
Right.
You end up having a relationship that may last, that may turn into a buy-in, buy-out arrangement sometime down the road. So anyway, I don't want to get too deep on that subject, but yeah, risk management, part of risk management is deployment planning. Part of deployment planning is capacity. Part of capacity changes is either your owner schedule, operational hours schedule, or additional doctor hours in the office.
Right.
Go ahead, Howie.
I was just going to say that another aspect of risk management, which we touched on, is the recognition that there are certain mediums that are just inherently more risky than others. The radio and TV mass media being much more containing much more risk than mail, but also because of the costs involved. Those are more expensive mediums, and if you want to be prudent with your marketing budget. Don't just throw it all around, and then when it fails, you go, oh well, I'll try something else, and you throw a bunch of other dollars over there. That's not paying attention to your risks, and you just waste money.
Yeah, then one of the media types that dentists are drawn to, which is fine because, we have a whole department devoted to it, but it's PPC. So PPC is a pay-per-click campaign, and I think people don't see the risk in it. Let me back up. I know the people who work in it see the risk in it. Okay. Yeah. But before they work in it, they don't see, in other words, they don't see it until they're there. Right. So, all right. So let's go down the list. Internal promotion, a great website, good organic positioning. We talked about reviews, rep management, online scheduling. We talked about all those things along with a properly done targeted offline promotion, 90% of the time being mail, as the foundation. That is now the foundation. If you don't have that in place, your budget shouldn't go anywhere other than those three things until you are, I'm not going to say dominating in those three, but I'm going to say really, really comfortable.
Yeah, they're producing well for you before you move on to print and mass media.
Or PPC or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to put $3 or $4 grand into Facebook campaigns and, boost up your social? Go ahead. It's no big deal. Right. But what you want to do with your overall budget is allocate it smartly. In the areas, it's okay if you want to take a flyer and do your own Facebook ads, or maybe you want to log on to Google and start your own PPC campaign. That's fine. Go ahead, do it. But don't use 90% of your budget for it. That's insane.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that is risk management, deployment planning. We talked about deployment timing, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about deployment volumes. Because when I say deployment volumes, it's how many things am I paying for? How many ads in the radio? How many TV ads? How many pieces of mail? How much am I paying for a certain PPC word or phrase? How much am I paying to boost this Facebook ad? Right? What is my deployment volume? Because in marketing, volume is awesome. In marketing, cost per impression is what you really kind of need to, it's one of the key metrics that you focus on. How much did it cost me to put that message in front of that human being? You can impress people via the radio, audibly. You can impress people via the television, visually. You can impress people with things like mail, right in their kitchen table. You can impress people on billboards as they drive by. That's what an impression is, right? So how much did that impression cost? And at what impression cost, what value do I get from that impression cost? So I know I'm getting kind of deep into the numbers right here, but there are many things out there that are outside of your budget. We discussed that earlier. I mean, radio and television for 90% of you are outside of your means. It is amazingly inexpensive to mail. And is very predictable to mail because you're only really mailing to the targets that you're only using your budget for things to mail to impress the people that are most likely going to become great patients.
Yeah, and people you want in your practice.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you can pay for impressions on Facebook. You can fund. Let's say you create a really cool post with a squirrel and a nut. It's fall. Come in, see your dentist, and you want to post that and impress that on the nearby 9,000 Facebook users immediately surrounding your office. You can do that, and to that, there's a cost for that impression. Okay. Now here's where this gets interesting. And maybe a little next level thinking, but I'm going to take you there anyway. If you are creating an impression that only talks about one thing and you're measuring it against something that creates an impression that talks about 10 things, you have to multiply the impression rate by 10. I'm going to give you an example. Remember that Facebook post, that Facebook ad that I said, the squirrel, nut, it's fall, come see your dentist, whatever, that kind of ad. And you want to push that out there and it costs you 12 cents an impression to push that out there to all the local people. Mail costs 58 cents. But that mailer says 10 things about your practice, not just one thing. Okay. So you have to take, the messaging and the impressions together to create the ultimate cost. So when you're looking at things to try and squeeze down your budget, try to get as many valuable impressions as you possibly can, whether it's going electronically through Facebook or PPC or some level of mail or whatever you're trying to get out there. When you look at cost per impression, you have to keep in the back of your mind that am I saying one thing or am I saying 8 or 9 things? Because if I'm saying 8 or 9 things, that's 8 or 9 times as valuable as just saying one, because Mark and Howie have already told me that if I keep saying just one thing, I'm just going to get those patients, and those people are just going to think I only do that.
Yeah. And plus I'll get tired of hearing that one thing and tune you out.
Exactly. Okay. So we hope, I knew this was going to be one of the most confusing segments of this. It's not. If anybody has any questions about this, we have a Dental Marketing Mastery Facebook group. Just log on, ask to become a member. When you're listening to these podcasts, if we've skipped over something too soon or if we've made it confusing for you, please just reach out to us on that Facebook group and say, hey, man, you were talking about X. What the heck does that mean? And then Howie and I and some of the staff, we're always monitoring it. So we'll chime in and we'll help you out.
Great. Well, thank you all out there in our wonderful listening audience. We're done for today. We look forward to speaking with you again soon. Bye now. We hope you've enjoyed our podcast today. You can find more podcasts on our YouTube channel, on Stitcher, and iTunes. Also on our websites, dentalwebcontent.com and newpatientsinc.com.